the sewing room. Hi everybody, happy Halloween! Welcome to spooky season. Yeah, okay, I lied. It's actually August. Yeah, so it's still August, but I need to get started on my Halloween sewing project, so I thought I'd dress up the studio just a little bit for you today, just to add to the spooky feeling. But yeah, it is August, and although to be honest, the weather the past few weeks has been nothing like August. It has been horrible, it's been raining, it's been dull, it's been more like autumn or fall than any other time of year, and I thought great, I'll be able to put some spooky kind of autumn cozy kind of clothes on that I won't roast in. And yeah, it's today the sun has decided to come out and it's really warm. Of course it did. But luckily I do have a kind of autumnal meets end of summer kind of dress in my Frozen 2 themed dress that I made last year. And if you want to check out the video for that, I will link that in the description down below or in the little box up above me here as well. But yeah, so it's a summery dress, so it's not going to be nice and cool to wear in the studio this afternoon, but it's got a little bit of an autumnal feel on it as well. Where is that side? Yeah, so what am I making this year? Well, last year I took part in the Historical Halloween challenge with a load of other costumers, and I created a 1910s fancy dress costume based on a picture in a pattern book from the era. But this year I thought I'm going to do something a little bit different for myself. But of course, because it's me, it is going to be historical, and I'm actually going to dabble in the 18th century this year. If you watched another one of my videos slightly earlier this year where I did a fabric haul, you will have seen the fabric that I'm going to be using for my Halloween project, and I did drop some hints and I did ask you to guess whether you could figure out what I was going to be making, and of course some of you were absolutely spot on. I am going to attempt to make the beautiful black and white striped 18th century gown that Christina Ricci wears as Katrina Van Tassel at the end of the Sleepy Hollow movie. And up here, tucked away in there, is the fabric. It's this lovely striped cotton that I found, which I think you would have seen in that haul video if you've watched that. But that is up there because I'm not actually making the dress today, because one of the things with historical costumes is you need the correct undergarments to go underneath, and that means today I am going to start work on making a pair of stays. So I think I'll start by just sketching out a rough idea for the stays. Just so I've got a little bit of a guide to go on. I'm probably not going to do anything too extravagant because, as ever, it's always a timing issue. I've not done actual proper stays before, so again, doing anything too extravagant is probably going to be counterproductive, because I need to get the stays done so I can do the dress. So I'm going to go for just that basic 18th century shape. Just marking the front line roughly there. So quite a deep point, with a slight curve to it, and a little bit of shaping, and then of course we'll have the classic little points which open to fit the stays to the waist. And then I definitely want the straps coming over the shoulders, and we're going to have pretty bows on. But what I want to do with these stays actually is to have the ability to wear them as a kind of like an evening bodice if I wanted to as well, and if I just wanted to put a simple skirt with them, kind of a little bit, you know, Vivienne Westwood, kind of that 80s kind of punky meets new romantic kind of vibe. Yeah, so I don't want them so low cut that they're just going to be, you know, impractical. I want them high enough that they're going to obviously hold me in place, but yeah, so I can still wear them with a little bit of decency if I didn't want to wear a chemise underneath them. I don't think I'm going to have them front lacing. I know that'd be a lot easier for me to get them on and off, but I like the idea of them being quite smooth fronted with just boning kind of channels. And obviously with 18th century, the boning channels will be sandwiched between the layers of the fabric that create the stays. So they're going to be kind of, all you're going to see is the stitching lines essentially of the channels. And like on some of the examples that I've seen, they have this kind of vertical boning going across the front as well, which just adds a kind of a fun, interesting kind of twist. So these will be half bone stays rather than fully bone stays. Again, a timing issue, and it helps keep the cost down as well. I'm going to use synthetic whalebone for this. I mean, with this being a Halloween project, I was going to go for good old classic black silk for these stays. But I actually, believe it or not, don't have any black silk in my stash. So I decided that I'm going to use a very, very dark blue. As in a really darker than like a navy, it's a really dark blue. Then to make the stays pop, the binding I'm going to do I've got a really vibrant royal blue silk, which is already made up into a strip of bias binding, and I've got some spare left in my stash. If I haven't got enough bias binding, I can make some more. So yeah, that's what I was going to do for the edge. So I'll just really make the edges pop, and that'll be around the top edge as well. Edges, straps, and of course ties on the shoulders. So I've been doing quite a bit of research over the last few months, collating pictures on my Pinterest account of different kind of types of 18th century stays that are appropriate for the time period of the gown that we are looking at. I have also looked at lots of different patterns that are available out there, but I decided that I was going to use my own pattern using some software that I have. I do own the license to some pattern making software which I use day to day in my work. As you know, I'm a dressmaker by trade and I make costumes for clients. So yeah, so sometimes it calls on me I can draw things completely from scratch by hand, the old-fashioned way, but I also have computer software which just helps sometimes if you want to do something a little bit quicker. It also has a lot of preset basic designs in it as well, so you can just pop measurements in and it will obviously pop up the pattern, and then you can normally, you will have to tweak and adjust it. It's not something that's going to just pop out a perfect pattern, so it's not a cheat route in any way by having software that you just pop measurements in and magic pattern appears. It's not quite as simple and straightforward as that. You do still have a really good understanding of pattern drafting basics to get this to work for you. So as you can see, the software actually has a pre-loaded, a pre-done 18th century kind of corset, she says in inverted commas. They call them corsets, but it's more like 18th century stays. As you can see, we've got this lovely, the centre front panel here, which has got this lovely deep pointed front on it. You've got two side panels here which have the tabs on the bottom, so obviously that will sit on the waist, and then the tabs flare out kind of over the curve of your hips. Then there's the back panel, again doesn't look like a bad kind of shape. We've got strap up here, and this piece here is a front side panel, and this piece actually is the busk pocket. So I don't know where the reference is, where they've taken this pattern from, but it appears to have some elements of accuracy to it. She says, you know, I'm going to take it with a pinch of salt until I've kind of got it together and kind of see how it looks. I am going to probably join the two front pieces together to make a single front piece, because I think that is more common in the 18th century stays that I've seen. You have one big front panel that kind of curves around your front, and then the seams are kind of at the side and towards the back. Yeah, and I think I'm going to have to do some minor tweaks, like reshaping this curve, which is supposed to kind of sit at the side of the bust. I think I'm going to make that into more of a point and change the shape of that a little bit. I may need to make the back taller as well, come up higher. It might be a bit too low at the moment, and more kind of fashion bodice at the moment. But I think this is a fairly usable base pattern, but we'll see. I'm going to put it together, do a quick little mock-up, and just kind of see how it looks. Okay, so as you can see, I have now cut the panels out, and you can probably see I've done some amendments to them, and this is before I've even got to the fabric stage. And one of the things when you're cutting out PDF patterns is, or really any kind of pattern, double check your measurements against the paper pattern. So things like your waist and your bust, just double check, because I realised I'd made a mistake when I went to design this pattern on the software and print it out. It automatically puts ease in, like you would on like with regular garments. You would always have like that few inches extra ease in it, and I forgot to tell the software to not put the ease on it, because obviously this is a structured base garment that needs to be pretty much skin tight. So yeah, so I printed it out, and it was of course far too big, because it's got, having it had 3 inches of ease in it, which yeah is no good for a pair of stays. So yeah, so basically I've had to do a little bit of cutting and skimming, just to skim the seam allowances down. You will also note that I put the two front panels together, like I said, to create this more solid triangular shape on the fold at the moment. But yeah, it'll be a one solid piece across the front, and I think that will look really nice. I will probably need to just tweak the edges, but I want to see where the height is on it before I worry about that too much. And the side panels, you can see this is where I've skimmed off the, essentially taken off the seam allowance on each of these panels. And then of course I also realised when I was looking at the
motion detected at the garden.
And I'm really sorry if you can hear, we've got a Ring camera that we've just set up in the garden, and something in the garden keeps setting it off. It's probably the bunnies, but yeah, so I'm sorry if you keep hearing motion detected in the garden. Yeah, it is connected to our Alexa, so yeah, and she tells me when needing to reset that. Yeah, so the little tab pieces at the bottom, obviously this edge is going to be bound like you would on a corset with bias tape, so you don't need any seam allowance on it, and obviously this pattern came with seam allowance right the way around the edges on it, which is kind of no good. So yeah, you see I've trimmed away the seam allowance here. So this is the seam allowance of the actual bodice panel piece, and then where it hits the waistband and where the tabs are essentially going to start, I've cut the seam allowance away, because when it's joined over, and I need to do the same one I can show you on this one. You see it will line up that point there, but the binding will go around over the top of that, and of course that will cover up that seam join there as well. So yeah, so I need to do a little bit more work to this, but I'm at the stage now where I'm probably going to run together just a basic mock-up in Calico, just to see how these pieces go together, and then perhaps do a brief try on, just really to see if the proportions are right on it. It's not really going to be able to, you know, pull me or anything like that, or, you know, offer much support. But yeah, I just want to see if the kind of the size and the scale is about right on it. Okay, it's a little while later now, and as you can see I've been playing around with the pattern and have put a very basic mock-up together. This isn't actually the first try on. The first try on was absolutely horrific. It was, yeah, I don't know what happened to it. The back was just completely out. This is the original back panel piece. If I turn around and show you the difference, it's, yeah, I don't know quite how, what, where, why, but yeah, it was just sitting really, it was sitting too low on my waist, and the whole thing rucked up by about 2 inches across the back. As you can see, it's probably still needs just a little bit taking out at the back down here. Obviously I've not got the straps on it, so it's not sitting quite as taut as it would, and obviously I've not got any I've not got the straps on, so obviously it's not sitting as taut as it would do when the straps are pulled up on it. And obviously there's no boning in it to help smooth out some of the wrinkles as well. But yeah, but I think there's definitely just a teeny tiny little bit just needs to come out just around there. You can see I've got quite a pronounced kind of hollow in my back, so, which is, yeah, and I often find this, that things, I'm kind of short waisted in the back, so yeah, I need to take a little bit extra out there. And as you can see, I've had to pin in the front just a little bit as well, and I could probably come in a little bit more just to give me a little bit more oomph. But otherwise, it's not looking too bad. I'll probably play around with the shaping at the bottom a bit more. The tabs just seem ridiculously huge, but I don't know. Obviously, that's something that I can do. Like, absolutely last thing is change the shape of the tabs if I want to. And the length of them, if I want them a bit shorter, and just have the point really long at the front. Quite like that. Yeah, I quite like that. And again, obviously there's no boning or anything in this yet, so this is just the shape kind of sort of holding itself together, so it's a little bit puckered. So once there's boning and more layers in it, so it will be a lot more sturdy, and I think it will be nice. Yeah, obviously I just need to look at these sides a little bit more, just fill in and reshape under the arms, again on that side. So again, with the top of the back, I'm having the same problem that I had when I made my Regency stays way back in January, February this year. Again, it could be that they're just cut too high at the moment and they're doing that gappy thing. I think I might be able to just lower the back a little bit, and that will just kind of basically negate where it's gapping, because I think lower down across my shoulder blades, I don't think the fit is too bad. From what I can tell, it feels nice and snug and secure across here. It's just that bit a bit higher up where it's just flapping a bit when I kind of move my shoulders. Yeah, I was a little bit disappointed with the pattern, to be honest, but that's why I said right at the beginning that if you are going to use pattern drafting software, you still need to have a good, you know, you can't just put the measurements in and expect a perfect pattern to come out. It's just not how it works. Obviously, although it has the measurements, it doesn't necessarily take into account things like curves of your back and kind of sway back and things like that. So yes, that's all kind of fitting kind of things that you need to do in person. Well, and obviously, just the ease of me fitting it to myself, I've stitched down the centre back seam where there would be lacing, and it's just pinned down here at the side, just so it's easier for me to get it on and off. Yeah, but obviously there's no kind of ease for lacing at the moment, so obviously that's something that I can allow in there. Okay, so here is the latest iteration of the stays. Oh, the battery's down on my camera. Woo! I'm attached. I apologise for the mess on my table. It's been one of those kind of pattern cutting afternoons. But yeah, so I'm quite pleased with how these are looking so far. So basically, I redrew and recut. I think you would have seen a little bit of footage of that just before the battery on the camera died. So I've charged it up a little bit, and so I can just quickly film this little bit before I finish for the day. But yeah, I think they're looking pretty good. I've attached, well, just roughly attached these straps. I mean, look at these. What are these? These are ridiculous. But that's obviously just helping pull the front up nice and taut. Again, obviously there's some no boning in this at the moment. This is just cotton calico mock-up, so but I think you can see how the boning is going to just smooth everything out once that is in. You can see I've shortened the back panel and I've shortened these side panels as well, but obviously I've had to cut new panels to do that so it works, looks nice. I've then played around with, on one side I've cut the panels so the grain line, I can't remember which side it is, I think it's this side. On this side, the grain line sits on the waistline, so that's the straight of grain there. But on this side, I've cut it so that the straight of grain is parallel with parallel with my body. But that means obviously the grain line on the waistline is a little bit off, but I'm thinking that actually that works better. It just helps Yeah, but I think once the boning's in, I think this is going to be fine. If anything, it's perhaps a smidge loose. I mean, I can easily get fingers up under there. So, but as I said before, because I've stitched the back seam down rather than put lacing in, what I might do is just take out that seam allowance and give myself that little bit of extra lacing gap, and that will just mean I can just cinch it in snugly. And then it won't be being obviously ridiculously tight, because I don't think I'm going to need it to be ridiculously tight. And you might also be able to see, I don't know if it'll camera pick this up, but I am just starting to pencil in, playing around with kind of the kind of bone channel layouts and where I want the bones to sit and where the bones are going to kind of flow and that, because I need to plan that out. Yeah. They're starting to look like stays. So yeah, I'm quite pleased with that. It's been a little bit more fiddly than I thought it would be this afternoon. I thought I might have gone a little bit quicker, but hey ho, it is what it is. That's why we do fittings and mock-ups.